They shall be my finest warriors, these men who give themselves to me. Like clay I shall mould them, and in the furnace of war forge them. They will be of iron will and steely muscle. In great armour shall I clad them, and with the mightiest guns will they be armed. They will be untouched by plague or disease. No sickness will blight them. They will have tactics, strategies, and machines such that no foe can best them in battle. They are my bulwark against the terror. They are the defenders of humanity. They are my space marines, and they shall know no fear. The Emperor of Mankind.
Absolutely epic.
Grown up
I think
voice.
one
If
of
you're
the
listening,
quotes
Black
that...
Library, get me in. I'll come. I'll come.
Yeah, definitely one of the quotes that gets you into 40k. I
It's
think
so
you
good.
read that
Yeah,
and you just
it's
think,
so good.
wow, what are these Space Marines and how can I become one?
Yeah, amazing. Yeah.
8-year-old me was like, I want to be a Space
I
Marine.
think that's the thing. There's so much language in here that when you're like a teenage boy, you're like, oh my word, terror and fear and battle and furnace. It's just amazing. Yeah.
No, definitely. So, Tom, welcome. Everyone listening, Tom, yourself as well, and to me, given it's the first time, welcome to The Rest is Warhammer.
Woo!
Woo! It's happening. It's official. We've been teasing it for a few weeks in the main podcast, but this is 6++'s new podcast. Here we're going to be focusing on the stories and the legends of the Warhammer universe.
Absolutely.
We are your hosts. My name is Lewis, and this is Tom.
I'm Tom.
We're here to inform and delight in equal measure as we explore the mysterious history of Warhammer.
Yeah, this is going to be really fun. Really, really excited to do it. The aim here is to, we're going to rotate through different topics and guests, and keep this running in the background throughout the end of 9th and start of 10th edition. Short, punchy, thematic episodes, nice and easy to digest, but just sort of get that lore content out there, and hopefully get people and players and familiar faces in at different points to talk about stuff they love, and really, really lean into I think they're one of the most sort of quietly underrated aspects of the hobby, which is just how appealing the stories and the narratives in and around it are. Because I think really that's what brings people back. In the end, I think they love the game and they love the friends and they stay for the gaming and the friends. But I think that the stories and the sort of imagined world of 40k is a very compelling place and has a lot to offer if you dive into it.
100%. I think it's something that you can enjoy regardless of, in some respect, regardless of finances, regardless of how far your friends away are, whether you can get games in or not, you can always enjoy the stories. They're always there.
Yeah.
Most of it's free online, isn't it? You can go and read loads of stuff. And
it's pretty much all I use Audible for, right? I have Audible audiobooks just sinking in from different parts of the 40k world all the time. It's great.
It's great accompaniment to painting, obviously. Once you've listened and watched all of the 6++ content, that's when you run out of that, then you can start listening to Warhammer stuff. So yeah, definitely. So yeah, we really want these episodes. Ideally, this one might be a little bit longer given it's our first one and we're just chatting at the start, but hopefully around half hour, 45 minutes is going to try we aim for. We don't want it to be another sort of monster like the main podcast is. They're really, really great. But we want to try and keep this one
out of control, isn't it? So this is partly so we've done little bits on them at the main show before. This is where we'll be putting those now. So I think in a bid to try and begin trimming down the monster we've created, we'll sort of have a focus here. But I think it's important for that to still have an outlet somewhere. So that's what we're going to do.
Definitely, it's a beautiful monster anyway. So
it really.
We wouldn't have it any other way.
It's a runaway monster. We've got no control over it now. What's going to be is going to be. So, right then, Lewis, what are we talking about today? What is episode 1 going to be?
So, episode 1 of The Rest is Warhammer, we are going to be discussing the backbone of the Warhammer 40,000 narrative. We are going to be talking about how the Imperium makes its Space Marines. Ooh. How it takes a small child alone in the Warhammer 40,000 universe and turns it through a period of 10 years of horrific physical, mental, and psychological alterations into an 8-foot tall killing machine. And I say that they're the backbone of the 40,000 universe. I really think they are.
Absolutely.
Space Marines,
they're iconic.
40k doesn't exist without Space Marines.
I think that's the first thing. It's almost the first thing everyone ever sees in like a Games Workshop window or on a poster. Is the Space Marine captures the imagination. There's just something about the armor and the size and the sort of boldness of the colors. Really, really grabs people. Everyone's obviously got their own different favorite legions, and they're just such an iconic part of the game. But I think it's interesting is the Imperium in general. one of the great things about how it's written is once you dive into the actual processes of what it does and how it functions, like many empires, it starts looking very dark and weird and horrible in all sorts of different ways. And Space Marines themselves, got this sort of surface veneer of virtue and honor and courage and all these things that they emphasize. But again, they're killing machines, right? And this is something that I think the lore reflects on it really well. And I know the early books of the Horus Heresy, Loken really reflects on this and the kind of the role of violence and the sort of contradiction of Space Marines as these sort of destructive sort of reinforcers of order, really, and the fact that they are weapons, really. And actually, that brings all sorts of challenges and issues for them with it.
Exactly. I mean, they're portrayed in Imperial propaganda as heroes,
yeah,
aren't they?
Angels.
They are
angels.
Paragons of virtue. Angels,
yes,
exactly. The angels of death. I mean,
yeah,
they are supposedly everything that humanity could possibly achieve and could possibly be. In reality, I mean, just the process that we're going to talk about over these first two episodes, just the process of making a Space Marine is in and of itself pretty horrific, pretty dark, and the end result is not much lighter. I mean, they are, and it's something that I would like us all of us listening, and Tom and I will think on it as we go through. But something that, on a slightly more serious point, that we should consider is whether we'd consider a Space Marine human. Are they still human? At what point in this process does their humanity end and the Space Marine-ness begin? Or does it? I mean, are they still human? Is that it? Does all the physical, mental alteration affect them? Clearly it does.
Yeah.
But does that suggest something about why half of the Space Marine legions back in the times of the Horus Heresy turned to chaos?
Yes, indeed.
Is there something innate in that process?
There's a real nature-nurture dimension to it. I think that's really interesting because so much of this is about genetic altering and interfering in sort of the nature of human beings. And as you say, these are engineered weapons which then malfunction and go wrong. And again, in the age we live in, that's a very compelling and very familiar set of topics, right? This idea of meddling in things and not knowing exactly what you'll get as a consequence. But I think one of the interesting things with Space Marines is that nature nurture element, right? How much choice or say or agency does a Space Marine have, right? Again, we've got these wonderful stories of them going and fighting these enormous battles and undertaking these daring missions and everything else. They don't get a lot of say outside of that, right? They're not doing a ton of other stuff, right? Yeah. They are very single-minded creatures, and they've been created thus. And again, I think that's certainly for me, that's where the humanity dimension is interesting, because I feel like for me, humans have more choice. They don't always. They make bad choices. I think that's one of the things humans do, right? Is they make bad choices. Got to be able to do that. I don't know if that's my slight hangover talking or what, but it's
hangover's going to contribute. But I mean, it's something that's definitely brought up in a lot of the Horus Heresy books, especially when the heresy is just getting started. There's a lot of talk among the Space Marine legions about what happens when the Great Crusade finishes. What happens when we're effectively finished with.
Exactly that.
You've got the legends of the Thunder Warriors back in the Unification Wars. They all mysteriously disappeared, and other Space Marine legions looking at themselves going, is this going to happen to us?
Exactly that.
And what do we do once we've killed everything?
Exactly that. And it's a very reasonable assumption for them to have, right? I think you look at that and it's, we don't know what the Emperor's long-term game plan for that was, but the Imperium had absolutely demobilized and got rid of previous sort of militarized forces that it had. And it's a very logical thing. And actually, the historian in me sort of turns to some of the most difficult periods in Europe's history, right? And obviously the 1930s is one. And one of the big crises that Europe faced in that time was the large-scale demobilization of lots of soldiers, right? You built these enormous armies, created a very intensified sort of militarized masculine culture, and whisked people around the world, and then drop them back home. And so you have all your sort of your armed groups, your militias, and a lot of young men or quite psychologically damaged men who didn't know where they were going to fit into things, and that was a big source of turbulence in lots of places. It disrupted Germany massively, Italy as well. Britain had a bit of it. And that's what happens. Well, when people and human beings are treated like weapons, it has long-term, lasting effects on them and how they think and how they 100%. Feel.
And I think it's the acknowledgement of the Space Marine legions that is something that could happen to them that suggests in my mind that they are still human.
Yes,
they still have those fears, they still have those concerns and those worries. I mean, they shall know no fear is the big thing, but they clearly highlight that they do have fears.
I think
it's not so much prevalent in the 41st millennium because
Yeah.
it's all obviously a bit of carnage, but
No.
and there is no end in sight. But realistically, in 30k, there is an end in sight, isn't there?
Yes, yeah, absolutely.
Prior to Chaos's meddling.
And I think that the overall project ultimately falls in on itself is about as human as it gets, right? I think that the great expansive ambition followed by the inevitable
Crash.
not quite making it and everything falling down is
not quite making it. That's a great summary of it. Billions ahead and it didn't quite make it.
That's my understated assessment of the Horus Heresy. For those in any doubt, the Imperium didn't quite make it.
That's definitely the hangover talking.
Yeah, absolutely right. Right, okay. So let's talk about selection then, because this is actually something I know nothing about. In terms of who the candidates are to be Space Marines and to be turned into Space Marines, where are these people drawn from? Who makes Space Marines?
Let me take you on a journey, Tom.
All right, let's do it.
And one thing I will say. This is mine and Tom's opportunity to properly geek out on this sort of stuff. So we'll try and go into a bit of detail here.
Yeah, absolutely.
We'll obviously keep it light, but we will try and approach these topics with some I'm trying to think what the word is, but some stringency. We will be going through it in detail and trying to make sure that we do convey as much information as we can. So hopefully you're going to learn a lot from this. If there's things in here that when I was doing the research for this episode that I was not aware of in the slightest, things that Space Marines can do and other stuff like that. So we'll come on to that. But in terms of selection process, Tom, we the kids, it varies between the chapters how it's all carried out, but it has to be children that are chosen. Usually somewhere between 8 and 12 years old. So what we're thinking, late primary school, early secondary school,
very young
children. Much older than that, and a lot of the organs and the alterations that have to be implanted and done to the aspirants is it just won't take much older than that. The process doesn't work. And as I say, each chapter will select their potential aspirants differently. Some of them in some chapters, cultures, it's quite an honour to be chosen to be an aspirant for a Space Marine chapter. So there's families that have traditionally supplied aspirants to their chapter, so they'll want to keep doing it, and they'll keep trying to train up their kids in advance to become a part of the Space Marine chapter. That you see that a lot more in like the Ultramarine based ones. They're a bit more about martial prowess and things like that. So they kind of prep kids in advance for joining a chapter. There's other chapters where kids are just taken, they're just abducted, they just disappear, never to be seen again, which is a slightly different way of looking at it. Some take you through like combat trials and things like that. So I think the Blood Angels are an example of that, where kids basically have to fight each other, and they'll pick the best and the best. And the selectors within the chapters are looking for particular traits that make those individuals feel like they're going to fit with the chapter's ethos and way of war. So they'll be looking for strength, aggression, and in some cases a sort of a level of being a bit of a psychopath that's comfortable with inflicting pain, being able to kill in some instances. Is that child comfortable with doing that? Are they actually able to do it? All things that will become important later in the process.
Yeah, this is a really interesting thing. This speaks to me again. I'm a historian of Africa, and one of the recurring themes in that during the sort of the ages of empire, right, was the deliberate recruitment of people from certain parts of the continent into sort of colonial armies, and again looking for, we want to find sort of the biggest, strongest, most sort of combative groups of people we can and recruit them into the army. This was actually something that Britain was very, very culpable of doing back in the day. And again, it starts that kind of chicken and egg pattern with nature nurture going, doesn't it? Because again, there's the process. People are being chosen because of certain aspects that they have, which are then going to be encouraged in all sorts of ways. So again, you're seeing how sort of patterns of behaviour and patterns of sort of, particularly aggression, really, I guess in this case, is being one of the main things, right? Are being encouraged, which is how you get to these incredibly sort of direct and extreme and violent figures that you see when Space Marines start wading into battle.
No, definitely. And one thing I want to do with this episode as well, actually, in addition to that, and I was trying to think beforehand where we'd find an analogy for a potential Space Marine aspirant in today's culture. You stay with me here, Tom. Stay with me. I was trying to think of an example of a child from all of our pop culture that we know happily inflicts pain on others, is incredibly clever, quick thinking,
A master
protective,
strategist. Yeah.
aggressive, master strategist.
You'd definitely get more command points if you brought him, I think, in your list.
Yeah.
Without a doubt.
Who could we use to represent to our brave listeners as someone that we could turn into a Space Marine over the course of these 2 episodes? All I could come up with, and forgive me in advance to that particular individual, was the kid that's in the Home Alone movies.
Okay, Macaulay
Culkin. Yeah,
yeah, nice.
The man himself.
So there's a couple of points. One, I assume Macaulay Culkin watches us already. So if you're listening, Macaulay, we don't mean any ill by this.
No.
What legion would Macaulay Culkin have been in?
That's a great
That
question.
is the question.
So I'm not. He does
not to derail
sadistic.
This too much. But,
no, this is fine.
I think sadistic is interesting, but yeah, I think there's a bit of Perturabo there, don't you think? With the sort of overarching planning of traps and stuff, that's kind of
that is a good shout.
Because he loves that stuff, Perturabo, doesn't he? He sets with the iron cage and all that stuff. It's kind of but I think obviously he's not a bad kid, and he's not motivated by sort of bitterness, I don't think, or hostility. But certainly the planning and the scheming makes me think of that.
Do we lean towards an Imperial Fist then?
Well, yeah,
I'm clearly biased in this particular
Are we now?
assessment.
Yeah, we've just turned this into a proxy war for our different interests at this moment in time. I'm Warriors and Imperial Fist, but no, so be it. That's fine. But yeah, I think that's it. It's definitely going to be one of the more sort of strategy and planning and overarching scheme ones. Right? I mean, you could actually have Ultramarines as well. Wouldn't be.
Don't want to turn people off too quickly, do we? We're still in the first episode, Tom. Come on.
Yeah. But that plucky underdog in him as well. Maybe he's a Crimson Fist against great odds. He's battling on, and gets +1 to hit against all the burglars outside his house because they outnumber him. That sort of stuff. I think he's
re-roll for falling downstairs.
Yeah. I'm re-envisioning that sort of Rin's World one where you've got all the orcs and the Crimson Fists are piled up, but there's just one Crimson Fist in the middle, just like with his hand.
Oh no! Mum's left me behind.
Yeah. Right. Okay.
I wonder if his mum would even notice if he gets abducted by.
Well, this is the thing, right? Yeah. Exactly.
How long would it be before she realised?
I think in terms of actually how humans respond to it in different planets and cultures, it's regarded. I mean, certainly from some of the books I've had, it's regarded as a very positive thing, or a way out of poverty, or a way out of strife and struggle, isn't it? In a lot of places. And I know for the Blood Angels on Baal, that's a recurring theme that life on Baal is very hard, and so that can be your way out, right? And you have a few characters that pop up in some of the Baal related stuff where they've failed the trials, and that's a really big deal, and they're very sad and frustrated about it. Which again, I think speaks to very much to sort of tensions in cultures of recruitment and sort of plucking people up and out of their environments, and sort of the sort of double-edgedness of that, right? There's opportunities in that, but there's also, if you lose young people from environments, and there's a cost in that as well.
Definitely.
Yeah. All right then. So we've got Macaulay Culkin of the Crimson Fist. He's ready. He's been plucked by the Crimson Fists from obscurity, taken to wherever they hang out these days. I'm not up to date on my Crimson Fist lore. I'm sorry, guys.
No, I think Rin's gone, isn't it? So...
Yeah, Rin's not there, so it's not from there.
He's on a ship.
Yeah. And you've got to turn this very, very skinny little kid into one of the 8-foot death machines that we know and love so well. So what on earth happens? What's the process here?
Yeah, so the process, and I think we will assume that Macaulay Culkin is going to survive this process.
I think he will. I back him. He's of strong heart and mind.
I think he's got what it takes. I think, but actually, once the kids are selected, there is actually only about a 1% survival rate.
Oh my word, that is horrific.
So that's pretty horrific.
That is scary.
It's a combination of the surgeries or the training. A lot of the chapters again have training which actively weeds out the weaker recruits by finishing them off. So I think Space Wolves are quite good at that. And there's different organs from some of the other chapters which can really mess up a kid as well. So but a lot of the process to go from child to Space Marine is centered around the surgery and the specialist organs that make a Space Marine a Space Marine. We all know they have 2 hearts and extra lungs, all this sort of stuff. But there's a lot of different organs around it that actually give the Space Marines quite a lot of their abilities that come up in the lore quite often, and some abilities that very rarely come up in the lore, which I think would be really good to explore over the course of these episodes. For Primaris Marines, and again, we'll probably assume that we're dealing with Primaris Marines, there's 22 different organs that get implanted.
That's a lot of organs.
Now, as I say, some Marine chapters have some extra ones, like the Canis Helix for the Space Wolves, and other bits and bobs like that. So we're not going to go into all the different variations of this process. So I think we'll stick with pretty Codex compliant ones. But yeah, there are different, and some chapters don't put certain organs in, like the Imperial Fists don't put the acid spitting organ in and things like that. So
interesting.
some of them have, for one reason or another, decided that this organ isn't going to be used, or these extra ones are going to be implanted. So
that's interesting.
All of these organs, and what is quite interesting, alongside those organs, there's a lot of psychological conditioning and physical conditioning that prepares the aspirant for the transition into a Space Marine. Now, the organs have to go in a certain order, because the body of the aspirant isn't ready for later stage organs, because some of the earlier organs actually prepare the body for the later organs. They don't necessarily have an external function. They just get the Marine's body ready for future implants. And some of those organs and some of the conditioning is all that preparatory sort of stuff, in addition to the learning of all the tactical information and becoming very strong to hit things harder and things like that. That all goes around that. But every single one of the organs and all the alterations that are carried out come out of existing Space Marines gene seed. So this is why there's a lot of focus on the apothecaries in both the game and the lore.
Yes, they're a big deal.
Yeah, exactly. The Space Marine gene seed is kind of it's renewed within an existing Space Marine, a sort of 6 to 10 year cycle. And you need this gene seed from a Space Marine to create more Space Marines. So each Space Marine can build more Space Marines effectively. But obviously, when you have only got a 1% survival rate, you do need to make sure you're collecting a lot of gene seed to make sure you can keep your chapter viable, which is why some chapters have just disappeared through lack of recruits or lack of gene seed.
Yeah. It's funny because I like those chapters are some of my favourites. I like the ones that are dying out, like the Flesh Terriers and Crimson Fist are the two sort of bog standard Astartes legions that I've painted. And what I liked about both of them is this sort of tragic story and the fact they're down to their last numbers. But obviously in the recent lore, then it's like, ta-da, Primaris, you're fine. Here's a bunch more people. They'll be fine. It's all going to go great. In you go.
No, definitely. And
I do like that dwindling narrative, right? It's good. It's interesting.
Oh, definitely. That's why a lot of the chaos chapters, or legions, I guess they still are, have to raid loyalist chapters for gene seed. Because especially with things like the Death Guard, I think forgive me if I get this wrong, but I think the Death Guard's gene seed is so corrupted it can't make new Death Guard. So they have to go and find more, and then the Night Lords end up doing the same. They have to go and raid gene seed.
They do, yeah. The Night Lords are really down to the dregs now.
Exactly, and because it's so difficult, and I can imagine in a Chaos Legion the survival rate's probably even lower because they probably don't really care as much.
I would think so.
I guess,
and they're often improvising, aren't they, in quite
Yeah.
difficult circumstances as well. Not to sympathise with Chaos Space Marines, but it's not easy.
You know my views on Chaos Marines, Tom. So
I know you don't like
if they're
them.
a bit more competent, they get more done. But there we are. But yeah, so what I would note as well before anyone thinks any less of us, this podcast is going to be of the utmost standing and repute. So we've avoided it so far, but Tom, there will be no vulgar jokes about a Space Marines seed at any point in the rest of this podcast.
I can pull that off. I can behave. I can be good.
Good boy. That's what we want to hear.
Davey's not on this show, so I think we'll be all right.
Davey's not here. He'll come. Or was it Adam Camilleri?
Nice.
But yeah, so the Space Marines, I think if you're very lucky as an aspirant, you can get those 22 organs in 14 surgeries. So that's 14
a mere 14
major surgeries.
A mere 14 surgeries, yeah.
Over the course of,
if you're a Space Marine that's on the NHS, won't set you back, so you'll be okay.
Yep.
It'll be very difficult for those Space Marines over in the US. You are racking up quite a bill.
Although by the end of it, I'd encourage any insurance company to be able to chase you for that payment
Yeah,
But you just
yeah,
stand
that's
there and
true.
go,
Yeah, I
I
was
just
going
said
to say
I'm not paying.
I'm not going to pay now that I'm an enormous death machine. No, fair enough. Yeah,
As
absolutely.
soon as I got my power armor on, I'm pretty
Right. So
confident.
it sounds like I can see why not many people survive this, because that's a horrific amount to put a body through, and it
Yeah.
feels like anything could go wrong at any of those stages. But let's dive into some of the organs then. Let's sort of try and build this up and sort of think
Build a
through
picture.
the different. Oh, you got a picture.
No, I don't have a picture. I said
Oh.
we're going to build a. We're
Oh,
going to build a mental picture. We're
No,
painting a mental
paint
picture
a
for our listeners.
mental picture. Yeah, much better.
Yes.
Right then, where are we starting?
None of you are going to sleep at night. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through some of these in the order they go in, because, as I say, some of them link to future surgeries and future training. So I think it's important that we go from start to finish.
Sure.
The very first, and it's one of the most important ones, I think, is the secondary heart.
Secondary heart, yeah. So I'd say this is the one that most listeners probably are aware of, because they always like to do little bits about like both hearts beating and all that stuff.
Exactly.
Yeah. That one pops up a lot. Okay, let's talk about it. Why
100%.
do you need a second heart?
Well, it's a backup. If you find unexpectedly that your first heart has a bolter hole in it,
right? Got you. Yep, that makes
always
sense.
useful to have a second heart, just in case that occurs. But it also actually boosts the blood supply, as you can imagine. Blood pumps fast around the body with two hearts, and it allows Space Marines to survive for extended periods in low oxygen environments.
Yeah.
Of
course, that's smart. Yeah.
So it just means your environmental resilience is a lot higher.
Mm-hmm.
You can change things around. So what I didn't know in Macaulay Culkin's case is that if you had two hearts, would it make you more resilient to the realization that your parents had abandoned you, or would it double the heartbreak?
Burn. Ouch. Let's hope it's the former, eh, Macaulay?
Yeah.
You'll be all right.
He'll be fine. He'll be fine.
Well, that's the secondary heart then. What's next?
Yeah, very useful. So next one, and whoever wrote these organs I've got a bone to pick with them on their spelling of words which just don't exist. This one is called the osmodula.
The osmodula.
OSSMODULA.
Yeah, I can see why this is less well known than the secondary heart.
Indeed. But it's actually a really clever one. Again, it doesn't really have any kind of use in game. You won't have necessarily, there's no rules associated with it, and there's very little lore about it. But what it allows Macaulay Culkin to do is it allows his bones to absorb ceramic chemicals from his diet.
Okay.
Now, the ceramics in the diet allow or make the Space Marine's bones grow larger.
Right.
And it eventually makes an aspirant's ribcage bulletproof.
Okay.
So I'm not really sure how necessary it is when they put power armor on top of this. So I don't really know how a bulletproof ribcage really helps.
I guess it's a second go at it, isn't it? If stuff does break through.
Anything that's strong enough to go through power armor, is it really going to go through it's probably just carry on, won't it?
Well, yeah. I mean, I guess
if I've got a Valiant harpoon,
yeah, okay. Well, that's not going to help, right? If you're firing a Valiant harpoon at a Space Marine, you're not doing great use of it anyway.
Yes, I'm probably losing that game,
but you're having fun doing it.
Having a great time.
No, I guess it's like because obviously power armor over a battle will take wear and tear, and you might get a few bits, few shots, straying in where they've broken through existing damage, and then it might be quite useful. But it makes me think, because obviously Space Marines have these enormous puffed up like chests, and they always look quite funny with that. But actually, it sounds like there probably is quite a massive pumped up like rib cage in there to go with the armor, which is fun.
No, 100%. So I think it allows, by making everything a bit bigger, it allows space to include all of the other organs that are to follow, and obviously protects them. So once it takes about 2 years to get to a bulletproof rib cage. But once they've got to that point, they'll be in a position where they've got a load more organs in. So the investment from the chapter is a lot higher because they've invested in all these extra organs, extra surgeries, but they'll be investing in a body that's now bulletproof. So it just, I guess, increases the chance that they can survive through the process.
Yeah, nice. So it's the osmodula. Like it. Osmodula. Very good. What's next?
Another good spelt one is the Biscopia.
Biscopia. Nice.
So this is the Stephen Box organ.
Okay.
We haven't got any friends of the show yet, but hopefully he'll become a friend of the show.
Oh, he absolutely will. I'm actually interviewing Stephen Box later. So.
Oh, are you?
Yeah.
Oh, fantastic.
So that'll
Excellent.
be fun. So yeah,
we'll have to ask him.
I'll point him in the direction of this again. Yeah, we'll get him on to Sussex at some point. If he's up for it, that'd be quite fun. He does. The lad does. I know he's a big fan of having an audiobook on when he's doing his painting and everything else. So.
Yeah.
So what does this do?
So this actually, all this does really, it's not a particularly exciting one, but it does make them all look like Stephen. It releases hormones into the aspirant that just massively increases muscle growth.
Right.
It's the main
Okay.
source of the gains, as it were. So just steroids, I think, effectively, because as your bones get bigger and your rib cage becomes bulletproof, and you've got to find room for a secondary heart, you obviously need much bigger muscles to accommodate all that sort
Amazing.
of stuff. And also, if you want to get from strength 3 to strength 4, you really do need to have some serious time at the gym, and this kind of makes
Absolutely.
all that gym time a lot more efficient.
Yeah. Wow. That's awesome.
So yeah, it's a good one. That
Yeah,
one.
because they're always training, aren't they? But it's almost always combat training. I don't
Yes.
recall them doing weights and cardio and that sort of stuff. Because I guess
Yeah, I mean, I don't think they need to. Once
no,
this
they don't
goes,
need
but
to
I
because
think
they're sort
once
of
they've
being
done
built
their
to be just innately very constantly fit and
Yeah.
energized.
yeah, and this
Very
definitely
cool.
helps with that.
Nice.
You combine that with the secondary heart pumping much more oxygenated blood around and things like that. Just think everything gets more efficient.
Yeah, for sure.
Huge efficiency gains, which Catachans seem to be able to achieve without any of this.
Yeah, they just do some pull-ups in the jungle. Job done. Same deal.
So do we really need a major surgery for that? But there we are.
No. Why haven't they
Pull-ups in
turned
power.
Catachans into Space Marines yet?
It'd make easier process. Wouldn't it?
Feels like that's a logical group of people to recruit from. I don't know where Catachan is and whose jurisdiction it would fall under, but I'd recruit from them definitely.
I would.
Big hench boys that they are.
I guess anybody trying to put Catachan under their jurisdiction, I think, has got
a problem. Yeah. Nice. All right. What's next?
Cool.
How many organs in are we? We've done 3.
That's 3 down.
We've done 3.
Down
We're on our way.
19 to go. Settle in.
Oh yeah.
No, I think the next one is an interesting one actually because it's our first Primaris Marine specific one, and it also has the dubious honour of being the only cybernetic implant. So this is the first one that our friend Belisarius called. Should we have Belisarius called as a friend of the show?
Yeah, but I mean, he's a known friend of the show because Chris plays Admech. Yeah, he's always sliding into Chris's DMs to ask for advice on Admech lists.
Brilliant.
It's cool. It's cool. Whenever he has to send an army out, he has to submit a battle scribe formatted list to get release on the different vehicles and different things. So he often goes to Chris and asks what he should be spending his command points on, what warlord traits to put on his guys, that sort of stuff. Yeah.
Excellent. Well, friend of the show, Belisarius cool then. This is his first attempt at fiddling with the Emperor's great work.
I see. Yes, coils was the giveaway.
Yes, sinew coils, they're called.
Nice.
So what it actually does is it adds metal into the tendons and ligaments of the aspirant to just hugely increase their strength and resilience.
Right.
So this is, bear in mind, this is in addition to the Stephen Box organ.
Yeah.
This one actually makes the tendons metal. So I can only imagine. Actually, no, I can't even imagine how painful this surgery must be to have all of your tendons pulled out and then turned into metal wires. It must take absolute days for this surgery to carry out. Like this is not a 5-minute piece of surgery, is it? This is serious stuff. I think I'd find this one quite useful because I always seem to get myself injured when I'm running. So it'd be really nice to replace all of my tendons.
Yeah, nice to have a bit of metal in the knee somewhere to just prop it up. I would love that.
Yeah, I get my 5K nice and fast, I think.
Yeah.
So that kind of links us on to another kind of Primaris one, which is one of these ones that kind of go in at the same time, really. Which is called the Magnificat.
Oh, Magnificat! When I was a much younger child, I used to sing in like choirs and stuff, and Magnificat is one of the like classic sort of choir hymn things. I don't know what it's a sort of Latin deal.
I say it must mean something in Latin.
Yeah. So it's all linked into the god stuff. I would imagine, but that's funny. So what is a Magnificat then?
So now this is something that the Primarchs have. Now, back on our friend of the show, Belisarius Call, when he was coming up, he's back. When he was coming up with the Primaris project, he had managed to get hold of the Emperor's Little Notebook. So he was obviously looking at the how-to guide, how to make a Space Marine, and seeing what he could do to improve it.
Absolutely.
Unfortunately, when he was looking at the Emperor's Little Notebook, he could only find half of it. And it seems the Little Notebook seems to have been half destroyed, which has obviously meant that he's not been able to fully recreate the Primarchs. Because, I mean, that would be ideal if you could if you had the resources to do it, you could create an army of Primarchs, and that would just you'd wipe the floor of everyone, wouldn't you?
Mm-hmm.
As long as you make the good ones. So no one else can recreate Primarchs, but he does have the first half of the Notebook, and it seems that Notebook has been destroyed at the point where they were talking about the brain of the Primarch.
Right.
So what we have in this situation is we have half the implant of a Primarch's brain.
Okay.
So in fact, it seems to be the really boring half, because all it seems to do is boost the osmodular and the biscopia organs even more.
Yeah.
So the story of obtaining this organ is much more interesting than the result of the organ itself, which is just to make the Space Marine's bones stronger and give it bigger muscles, which is what makes the Primaris Marines larger.
Yeah, I'm gonna say I think destroying the ability to make more Primarchs is a good play. Well done, whoever did that. Obviously, we don't know, but I think
a world with 100 million.
We don't need more Primarchs. I don't think the Imperium needs more Primarchs. It's already stuck with all the ones it already made, and they're running around basically making doe eyes at each other while they have duels that cost millions of lives, as far as I can see from the lore at the moment. It's sort of Mortarion and Gilliman leveling whole planets so they can have a little flirt whilst they have their fight with their swords. Then no one actually dies, and they go off again, and they come back, wreck another planet, round you go. So yeah, we've probably got enough Primarchs. Oh, Dawn. I imagine the Lion's going to have some stuff to say about it, but then he might bring some stroppiness of his own. I could see a bit of that coming in.
Lion has got some teenage angst.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Brilliant. Right. Okay. So we've got another one coming up. What's the next one?
Indeed. So this is our
number 6,
Primaris one. Yeah. What are we on? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. This is the 6th one.
6 of 14.
So this is called the Belisarian Furnace.
Okay.
So, friend of the show, Belisar is cool. Back again. 3rd time lucky. He's named this one after himself. So he's followed in the footsteps of our friend Arcan Land and his Land Raider and his Land Speeder. He's named this one after himself. So the best way I can think of describing this one, Tom, is I'm going to draw on some video game knowledge here. From
nice.
Back in the day, PlayStation 2. I think, actually, to be fair, I think they make more modern versions. But did you ever play the game Dynasty Warriors?
It's funny that you should mention it, Lewis, because I was never allowed games like that. But I used to be child-minded a little bit every now and again, and my child-minded kid, Simon, had Dynasty Warriors on whatever console it was on, and it was the best thing in the world. You just run around smacking everything into tiny bits.
Just mash square.
You just go through so many people. It's the sort of the age I was at. It's like, oh, wow, video games are super easy. All I'm doing is just running around, just hitting people with a big stick.
Gives you a little KO count in the corner.
Yeah.
How many people you've killed.
ludicrous violence.
And then what's his name? Lu Bu would come along at the front of that wall, and he would just kill you immediately. And you'd have to restart. But then you'd have to kill all of his mates again, which is always quite funny. Or you just try and run away from him, and he chases you across the map for ages and ages and ages. But so in the game Dynasty Warriors, if you mashed square enough, and mashing square cut off enough heads, you'd build up your Musu meter. And you could then hit circle to enter Musu mode, which basically made you invincible for a bit and just kill more stuff even quicker. And you'd give your thumb a rest because you wouldn't have to mash square. You just hold circle down, and your character would just start spinning and jumping and just killing everything. So what it actually does, in terms of a Space Marine, is a little bit like that. When a Space Marine gets really, really stressed during battle, it allows the Space Marine's hearts to just work really, really hard. So it just like injects stimulants into the hearts of the Space Marine to make them pump really fast, make the Space Marine able to run faster and even more efficient and just boost everything else up.
Go up a gear.
But the key thing with it is once you've used it, you have to let it charge up again.
Yeah, very video gaming.
Which is why it's like
very video gaming. Yeah, I like it. Yeah, absolutely. And furnace, I think furnace kind of implies that. Yeah, I feel like running on hot. It feels a bit dangerous. I feel like that's something you don't want to be doing too often. I think that sounds like it's a little bit extreme for an organ to have inside an actual physical body. Yeah,
you're like doubling your speed of your hearts, which if you've got 2 is a bit risky. So it's just when they get under times of particular stress, really. So and they just need to get to that next level. But that's it. That's the last one of Belisarius' calls for a little while. We'll go back to.
He certainly had more of a hand in this than I would have thought.
Indeed, yeah. So that's what I think is really interesting to put the Primaris Marines in this, because they do have some extra bonuses that do kind of raise them above a normal First War Marine.
Yeah.
Which is good. So we've got a pretty boring one coming up. I'll just fly through it. It's the hemastomen, which basically pairs up with their secondary hearts, and it makes the Space Marine's blood more efficient at carrying oxygen. Not particularly exciting, but yes, more oxygen is great.
Neat to have, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And then I think we come on to one which I think a lot of people will recognise. It's called the Larraman's organ.
Yeah.
And this is basically, it's quite a famous one. It comes up in the books quite a lot as something that Space Marines can do. It's basically the insta-heal organ.
Yeah.
So it messes with Macaulay Culkin's white blood cells, and it allows any like cuts and minor injuries to like instantly scab over. So they'll get a cut or a small bullet wound, minor tank shell, something like that, that makes its way through the power armor, and it will just immediately heal itself, which is obviously really great. But sometimes I think in the lore, quite a lot what happens is they play up the failure of this organ to keep up with certain injuries. So like you'd have a space marine that's been hit by a melter gun, and they'll just go into a long detailed paragraph about how the Larraman's organ just can't keep up and it can't make enough white cells to repair the damage, which clearly from being hit by a melter gun would clearly, it would ruin your Sunday afternoon. That's for sure.
So it's like an emergency override that isn't always going to cut it, really.
Yes.
It's going to do what it can.
Yeah.
But
so,
like
if you
inflict
get paper
such
cut or
damage
something
that
like that, it will help.
Yeah.
So that's a good one.
Yeah, very useful one to have. Very useful to have.
I mean, I'd quite like that one just in general.
I'd love it.
Life in general, that would be great.
As a clumsy person, that'd be a very useful thing to have. Yeah,
definitely.
Next one. That was number 8, wasn't it? I think
that was number 8.
So we're on to number 9. Macaulay's still with us. Macaulay's still alive, still going.
Macaulay's making it.
He's got most of the organs now, but we've still got a few more bits to get in there.
Yeah, we're entering the territory of sci-fi bullshit now.
Sci-fi bullshit. Oh, we're way past that now.
have we already?
Yeah, we've been well into it. Yeah.
Well, I wonder then. I'll see what you think. Whether this takes you to the next level.
Right. Okay.
This is called the catalepsian node.
Ooh.
So again, one for the spelling bee there.
I like that. Catalepsian node. Nice.
This one, I think a lot of people know about this one. They might not necessarily know the name.
Mm-hmm.
But this is the organ which allows a space marine to survive on very little sleep. Mm-hmm. So they can go indefinitely. So this is just permanently. They can live on 4 hours sleep a day. Okay.
Oh wow.
So I mean that's okay. I mean I live on about 6 hours sleep, so I'm basically a space marine. But it also allows them to...
I just need sleep. I'm such a bad human without sleep. I'm not happy. I'm angry.
Sleeping is not one of my skills. I will drift off and then I wake up like an hour later and then I'll drift off again and I wake up an hour later and after about 6 hours I just give up and
sleep forever.
No, we are different on that front, Tom.
Yeah, man.
But it also allows, and this is going to be very useful for any of our any student listeners here that have got some deadlines approaching. It allows a space marine to go for 2 weeks without any sleep at all.
Oh wow!
Which is quite good. Quite a clever thing to do. Now that actually works. There's a downside to doing that.
Clearly, as you would expect. Yeah.
This is not perfect. Macaulay Culkin does have to take some risks in doing this.
Yeah.
And I'd be interested to speak to a neuroscientist about how this actually works, because what the space marine can do is it can switch off half its brain and then just carry on the other half. So like half its brain falls asleep and the other half just carries on and then just switches backwards and forwards. And so they can do that for about 2 weeks before they get any kind of serious negative effects. But as I say, I'm no neurological expert here.
Yeah, that doesn't feel as holistic as I would imagine a brain is. But
which is why I think we're in the realms of sci-fi bullshit here, because surely I'm pretty sure like one half of your brain does certain things, and another half of the brain does something else. So like one part of your brain does like your motor function, doesn't it? And then so if you shut that off, does that space marine just like fall over, drop everything it was carrying?
Yeah, exactly.
And then just like lying there going, technically I'm awake, but half the brain that controls me being able to walk has just gone to sleep. So I need to sit here for another 4 hours. So yeah, I'm not entirely sure how that works. But I think each bit of the brain is quite valuable. So I'm interested to see how that kind of flips around, really. You can just jump backwards and forwards. So that, Tom, is some of the initial surgery. So we've got
a
4 or 5 surgeries there.
Yeah.
This is the point now where, and this is something we talked about in the first podcast, in one of the podcasts previously, we're introducing this. This is where Culkin starts with his hypnotherapy.
Right, okay. So we've got the body sorted. Now we've got to mess up the mind.
The body's on its way.
Doing what we want. Okay.
Still plenty of surgery to go, but the body has started to become a little bit more Space Marine-like. So that's when they go into the hypnotherapy chambers.
Mm-hmm.
So Macaulay Culkin takes a load of drugs, gets completely sedated, put in this chamber, and then is just subjected to like massive visual stimuli, huge sounds, oral stimuli, all sorts going on. And it just pummels him whilst he's lying in this chamber with all the information that makes a Space Marine a Space Marine. So it really starts to kind of psychologically make him a Space Marine. Now, one of the key things that it does, which I think is really, really clever, is it allows the Space Marine to start controlling their own metabolism, consciously controlling their bodily functions.
It's a big deal.
Slow things down, speed things up, and actually go, I don't need to breathe now, or I don't want to digest stuff this quickly, or I've just taken some poison on, I need to slow it down, things like that. They can consciously do that. And
super powerful.
It's really powerful. And obviously, we have a big loss of aspirants at this point in the process.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Because it's not gentle at all. They are given a cocktail of pretty horrific drugs. They're put in this chamber and they're just pummeled. Oof. So a lot of aspirants go completely insane, as you can imagine.
That would break.
They've already survived 5 pretty horrific major surgeries. And have been, obviously, because you've got to think in between all these surgeries, they're just training. They're being given doctrine. They're like being propaganda machine is going massively. They're learning everything. They're learning about how to be an Ultramarine or an Imperial Fist and all these things that they're supposed to learn and pick up. Their personality is just being eroded, and then this really kind of finished that process off. It just absolutely blasts them with stimulus, which can just overwhelm people. As you can imagine. Macaulay Culkin, he comes out of his little chamber.
He's still made it. He's made
a different man. Let's be honest.
Stern stuff, our boy. He can hang in there.
He's gone from heating up door handles to slightly on the edge of insanity. But so I think we'll probably let's do maybe 1 or 2 more organs, and then we'll leave it there for now because I'm thinking we're at 45 minutes already. So
yeah. As I say, this is the pilot, right? So
this is the
all right for it to be a little longer.
But so the next organ then, after he's come out of that chamber, is called the preomnor. And it's a stomach organ, so I think it should be called the prenom-nom-nomor.
I like that.
You don't have to laugh at that. It was awful.
No, I do like that. I'm a big fan of om-nom-nom as a concept. So it's nice to see
it needs to be brought back, I think.
Absolutely. So what does the pre-om-nom-nom-nor do?
The pre-om-nom-nom-nor, Tom, if you'd like to know, is a pre-stomach. So he's like a cow now. He's going to have 2 stomachs.
Right.
His cows have 2
stomachs.
I
would love to have a pre-stomach would be great.
Yes.
Just
you put your alcohol in it.
Oh, yeah. Nice.
So, but it basically what it allows them to do is neutralise poison in indigestible foods. Like
right. Okay.
So, that's why I think, would it work on alcohol? Alcohol's technically a poison, isn't it? But I think they might have another liver as well.
Yeah, it is.
I can't remember. But would that make Macaulay Culkin the most boring person to go to a party with?
I wouldn't take a Space Marine to a party. I don't think that feels like it. That doesn't feel.
But even in this stage where he's not properly a Space Marine, he's now like Stephen Box size.
Stephen Box size.
But he's still technically a human, kind of sized individual. He's on the edge.
He's on the way.
Okay. But he also, he now processes alcohol at ridiculous speed, so doesn't really get drunk, which is just very boring.
Yeah, absolutely.
But yes. And then we'll go to the final one, I think, which is something that I think is very underused in the lore of a Space Marine.
Yeah.
Which is called the homophagia.
Oh, yes.
Say that 10 times quickly.
Homophagia.
So this is the organ which allows a Space Marine to absorb the memories and experiences of what it eats.
Interesting. That's very weird.
Just letting that settle.
Yeah, that's a very, very weird power to have.
Yes. So we've got a bit of Kroot coming in here now.
And how on earth does that happen?
So
how do you eat something and then get it? Where in the thing you're eating are its memories stored? I guess is
exactly like is it just like eating DNA or is it like just
make
like
any sense?
So
Crazy.
it's as I say, it's very underused in lore because they don't seem to do it. The Blood Angels do it.
Mm-hmm.
It comes up quite a lot in them.
Yeah, Blood Angels are big on it. Absolutely. Yeah.
It makes them go a bit crazy.
Yeah.
because they start eating everything around them. Really, don't they? They get a bit blood mad and start chewing on
I
stuff.
can see my boys, the Night Lords, enjoying this a little bit.
Yes.
Yeah.
But it definitely feels like it could be used in lore more. But there's also probably a bit of a side effect as well.
Yeah.
In that, I think it would be really annoying if Macaulay Culkin was to, like, on his day off from his training, because they clearly obviously have day offs. Definitely.
Oh yeah.
He goes out with his mates to McDonald's or something like that. Any other fast food chains are available, and he just ate a Big Mac. Would he then be taking on the memories of whatever cow was unfortunate to go into that burger?
I would assume so.
So he's just sitting there having his McDonald's, and it's like, whoa!
Yeah,
Suddenly, I'm in Derbyshire in the field.
Cow memories, yeah. valuable cow memories.
And that would just fill up your brain. Even a Space Marine's brain would just get full up with
meaningless
crap.
Like that's going to quickly turn meals into quite unpleasant experiences, I think. I don't want this. I wouldn't want an omophagia. That doesn't sound very useful to me. I could see for tracking and stuff must be amazing, right? There's sort of absolute dynamite, sort of piecing together what's happened on the scene in battle, all this sort of thing. But it
must just be a lot of fear. They're probably eating it going, someone's gone, oh God, there's a Space Marine, blam, just been eaten.
Yeah.
And another scared person, another scared Eldari.
Yeah, very much so. Very much so, yeah.
So yeah.
Is that all the organs? Is that the whole set?
That's not all the organs, no. That's all the organs for today.
Okay.
You can settle into. We're basically this whole process that we've gone through so far. It's a good stopping point.
Yeah.
We've gone for about 8 years now of
8 years
physical training, psychological conditioning, hypnotherapy, trials, surgery, intelligence tests, religious indoctrination, political indoctrination, both of which would rival the most despotic regimes in human history.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Outdo it, I would say. Yeah, absolutely. It's crazy. Yeah.
And if you're lucky, you could have got all of that done in 5 different surgeries. So if you're lucky and you haven't done all those organs individually, you can combine some of them together that happen at the same time, and you get 5 surgeries in there. Macaulay probably started this with about 1,000 mates, and they've all been whittled down to about a few hundred now. So he's probably lost about 800 friends, which is probably not great for his own kind of psychological state. And to top all of that, he won't have had a phone call from his mum either.
No.
Poor guy.
Poor lad.
But luckily, to compensate for his parents' failings, he's now... I'm taking this very seriously.
No, they raised a strong, independent kid. I don't think they'd do anything differently.
No, definitely. And she doesn't need to worry about forgetting him in the future. So
yeah, I've not seen the sequels, but I assume they do it again.
They come up with more inventive ways of forgetting him. It's like, oh, he's not in the car. Oh, he's not on the plane. Oh, he's not on the bus.
That's so funny.
Oh, he's now a Space Marine. How does that happen?
Exactly. Oh no. Yeah.
But he is now part of a brotherhood. I think.
Yes.
You're probably at the point. You're 8 years in now. You are part of something greater than you. A community that there or thereabouts cares about his success, which he's probably not had before. He's got 2 hearts now, which is pretty amazing. His bones are bulletproof. His arms make Stephen Box look like pipe cleaners.
Yeah.
His tendons are metal. He's got half of Primarch's brain. Pretty sweet. Which we just really hope isn't Kurz's brain.
No, absolutely. You want Kurz's. You want those visions, mate. Get the visions in.
Get the visions of how he's going to die.
Yeah.
He can, in times of stress, he can do Dynasty Warriors Musu mode.
Heals
wounds instantly.
Yeah, that one's very cool.
Doesn't need to sleep anymore. He can eat poison. And should he decide to eat you, Tom, he's going to get all of your memories of playing Genestealer Cult.
Oh, the poor guy. A constant headache. So just to reiterate, what you're saying is this is a years-long process that changes your physiology, makes you quite odd and angry, but does bring you into a wider community of like-minded individuals. So in that sense, it's essentially just becoming a 40k player in that sense.
Yes.
Yeah, very nice.
Minus the surgery.
Minus the surgery, yeah.
As far as I'm aware.
Yeah. Great.
You do start to lose your earlier personality. So there was a previous Lewis that predated playing Night Valiants.
Nice. Yeah, I mean,
quite good at the game.
Well, what is it? I might be getting ahead of us here, but at what stage can you be a scout? When are you considered ready enough to be chucked out of a land speeder storm to die turn 2?
Do you know what? That's a very good question, Tom.
Yeah, I don't know. Well,
I
that's
think
something I'll look up for next time.
yeah, we'll have
I
to come on
also
to
I
that
want to
next
find out
episode.
where the flesh tearers recruit from as well, and see what their role in this is, because I don't know. That's got me thinking about it now.
Yeah, definitely. And
Great.
as a bit of a teaser for the next episode, because I am a bit of a tease, we're going to obviously finish off the story of Macaulay Culkin becoming the Space Marine. In the next episode, if you tune in, he is going to learn how to breathe underwater.
Ooh.
We're going to learn how he works out how to survive in a vacuum,
Mhm.
and learn how to track targets by licking them.
Nice.
So it's going to get creepy. It's
Sounds
going to
like
get weird.
some very useful stuff is coming up in part 2, so I'll look forward to that. Brilliant.
All this and more on The Rest is Warhammer.
Yeah, the rest is Warhammer, man. Woo! Yes. Okay, excellent. Thanks for bearing with us, guys. Obviously, this episode's a little longer because it's the pilot and we're getting things started and we're trying some stuff out. So we're going to get this down to a sort of tight focus 30 for future episodes. We're going to shape this as we go. Lewis is really keen to sort of evolve this and develop this as we go. So please give him feedback, give him help, let him know what works, and again, the sorts of things you'd be interested in hearing about, and sort of any sort of additional mix-ups to the format, etc., etc. It's always an evolving process, and we welcome any and all feedback you guys have.
Definitely.
Brilliant. Well, Lewis, thanks very much for running me through that. It was very interesting, if a little bit scary.
That's all right. No,
and
thanks for
I
joining
feel
me.
like I genuinely learned a lot. There's a lot in there that I didn't know, and that was really, really good fun. Great.
Yeah, there's so much detail in this process, isn't there?
And it's crazy. Yeah, it's absolutely crazy. And we'll get the band back together for part 2 and see how Macaulay's getting on and what new horrors await him, and we'll be back again then. So feel well out there, guys, and thanks for listening.
Excellent. Yeah, thanks for listening to The Rest is Warhammer.
Woo!
See you soon.
Bye, guys.